Alright, so welcome back everybody. So today I'm going to show you guys how to play Dingo's Dreams. First, let's start with the theme of Dingo's Dreams. Basically, a dingo and several other animals in the outback have decided to go on a walkabout. And in doing so, they've also gotten lost. And so it's our job to help them find their way back home. Now, in Dingo's Dreams, they're going to be dreaming of locations that these animals have possibly visited, for instance, and it's our job to basically help them with that. So, the objective of the game is sort of like bingo. You see, we have two grids here. We're playing with two different animals. We have the dingo and the echidna. And if you have the Kickstarter edition, you can actually play with up to 5 players because we have the honey ants, which is in the Kickstarter. Then we have kanga, so kangaroos, and then the koala. So the koala is the other player as well. So you can have up to 5 players with this game if you have the Kickstarter edition, which I do. So anyways, the object is sort of like bingo, okay? We have this card here, and if it's your first time playing, you can play with this one. Or you can just play with the top card, and there's a whole bunch of cards. But anyways, for instance, on this here, you would need to have animals on your grid in each one of these locations. 5 of them. There's 5 in total. So you need to have, basically, you would need on each side of these tiles is the corresponding animal. So if you're playing with the dingo, then all of these are dingoes, and in order to win the game, or to win the round, there would have to be a dingo flipped up on each of these tiles in each of these locations. So, like, for instance, here, 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 and here. And the first player to do that, whether they do it with the dingo, or they do it with their echidna here, their kidna, they would win this card. And if you were playing multiple rounds, which is most likely, you'd win this card, and this would be a victory point at the end of the game. So winning these is pretty simple and fast. But for maybe your first game, you can just play one game and see who wins, basically. But that's basically what you would have to do. The objective would be to do that. And so, we have a deck of cards here, these little tiny cards here. And one player is basically going to be in charge of these cards. And they're going to flip over a card. And then here we have the green ocean. And so basically it'd be like calling out B6, B7, and everybody who was playing bingo would, you know, look for their B7 on their board, and they would, you know, put something on it, or it's been a while since I've played bingo, but you get the general idea. They would find B7 on their bingo board, and they would mark it. And that's basically what you're doing, except with this, you're looking for green, so you're looking for the tile with this green border here, and then ocean. And so everyone's going to do this simultaneously. So let's see here. Where's my green ocean? Here's my green ocean here. You can barely see it on the outside. And then I would just flip this over. And so now I have a dingo here on the outside. And then the echidna player, their green ocean is over here, this side. So they would flip it over, and they would have their tile out there. And obviously you would maybe try to want to go in this direction or go in this direction to get 5 in a particular order. Now, if you were playing with this particular card here, then obviously our echidna and our dingo are not even on this at all, okay? But if it's your first time playing, you can play with this one here, which is basically 5 in a row in any direction. This direction, this direction, this direction, this direction, this direction, this direction, or diagonally, as long as it's 5 in a row. And the first player that does that would win. And so basically, let's just say we were playing with that instead, okay? Well, we'd have one on the end, and we would have one here, and maybe we want to go this way, or maybe we'd want to try to go this way. But here's where it gets interesting, because that's just the walkabout phase. The walkabout phase is that you reveal this, the top card of this little deck, and you flip over the corresponding tile, if there is one. Then, after that is done, you go into the dreamscape phase, okay? And then what happens in that phase is you have these tiles here, and they're actually going to be utilized in the Dreamtime phase, not Dreamscape phase. So in the Dreamtime phase, then you're going to take your corresponding tile, and you have to add it to this grid. But you can't just simply be like, oh, let's replace this with this. No. You can only go in from one of the sides. So for instance, I can go this way, I could go in this way, I can go in this way, I could go in this way. But since my Dingo is over here on this side, for instance, I'm going to go this way. And so it has to be slid in to that spot. So now I've pushed over the Dingo that was here with this Dingo. Now this Dingo's here, this tile goes there, this tile is now here, this tile is now here, and the tile that was on the end is now taken out and is put in front. And then during the next Dreamtime phase, meaning after the next walkabout phase, then this would be the tile that would go into this grid and kick another tile out of the grid. Okay? And so Echidna would do the exact same thing as well. So maybe, perhaps Echidna wants to do the same thing and slide this one in over here to try to get 5 in a row. Maybe that's what they'd want to do. And so that's what they would do. And then this one would be kicked out, which is somehow the exact same one as the one I've got. Now, here's where things can kind of be kind of cool. Now, you don't know what card is going to be drawn next, okay? And this is a gold mountain. This tile here is a gold mountain. So if the card is not in the grid that is chosen, that is not in the grid here, but is actually here instead, out of the grid, what you do is you don't get to flip one of these over. You get to flip this one that's not in the grid over onto its side. And then when you are adding this tile into the grid during the Dreamtime phase, then you get to basically add where you want to put this Dingo, basically is. So that's really cool that you can kind of do that. And that means if you kick, like for instance, if I was to put this Dingo here, and this Dingo was kicked out, for instance, I would still get to utilize that Dingo during the next Dreamtime phase. So there's some strategy, and so it's definitely sort of like a puzzle for sure that you'll want to try to, you know, figure out this bingo puzzle long before your opponent does, to obviously try to beat them to the punch. But basically, that's what you're going to do. Okay? Pretty simple, pretty easy. So, walkabout phase, Dreamtime phase. That's all. That's all it is. So that's pretty much all you have to do. It's a pretty easy, pretty fun game. And then, of course, you can play just one round if it's your first time. Whoever wins the first game, obviously, first practice game, wins the card, and they win the whole thing. But, you know, it's recommended that after you've learned how to play this game, that you add a few cards to the equation, because there's a whole bunch, and you try different patterns, obviously, trying to make certain patterns work, obviously, as well. So, and this one is basically still pretty cool. So, there's a lot of different patterns, and some are harder than others, obviously, to complete. So, it will add some variability to the game, variety to the game. But then there's something else that you can also do to add variety to the game. So, let's say we were playing with this pattern here. And this was the pattern that you needed in order to complete the game. The first person that got this exact pattern with their dingoes or their echidnas or whatever animal they're playing with would go here. The first player that did it would win. But there is a variant you can add to the game. And so there's this little thing here which has a whole bunch of different symbols on it. And so, for instance, we could instead play with these tiny little extra discs to make it a little bit harder. They're actually called hazards. And here's the hazards. So, for instance, I could put out 4 of these hazards instead. And so, let's just grab them all out of the bag. But I could add a few hazards to make it harder, for instance. So let me add them to prove the example. So here we have these 4 waves, okay? This is a wave, this is a wave. And they're on the outside. they're actually on the outside borders of this. They would be here, here, and here. So for instance, the hazards would be here, they'd be here, they'd be here, and they'd be here, okay? So each of these locations are hazards. Not only would the player have to have the animals in this location here, these 5, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one, to complete this card and win it, but they'd also have to make sure that there was no animals here, 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 or here. Because if there was even one, the objective wouldn't be complete until it was kicked out of that location. So basically that's what these are for. Obviously these discs won't actually be sitting on the tiles, they'll be sitting on this card. In fact, they fit nicely onto the card, so you'll always know where the hazards are fairly easily, obviously. But that does add some extra time to the game, possibly, and even more strategy, of course, to the game. But if you want a slightly harder game, you could add those hazards to the game, but you don't have to. So that's basically how you play Dingo's Dreams. And I'm going to do a quick playthrough. I hope it's quick. I played this game already, and it went like that. And we'll play not with the hazards. We won't even play with the patterns. We will just play with the most simplistic one there is. The one that basically lets you do any 5 animals in any, you know, lined pattern. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next video.